Welcome to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Future Leaders is part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, focusing on pharmacy student perspectives, interviews, and the future outlook of our pharmacy industry.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Richard Waithe, founder of MedVize, and you're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm your co-host, Tony Guerra, for the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast, broadcasting from the Des Moines Health and Public Services Building at DMAC's Ankeny campus. Connect with me on Facebook at TonyPharmD1 and check out my audiobook, Memorizing Pharmacology, on Audible or Amazon.com. Today, we are finally speaking with Dr. Richard Waithe, who is a community pharmacist in his hometown of Miami, Florida. He attended pharmacy school at the University of Florida College of Pharmacy in Orlando. And after pharmacy school, Richard noticed the lack of quality care patients received in community setting, and in response created a personal medication management company, MedVize, a vision of what he thinks MTM will be like in the future. He's also host of RxRadio, and I have listened to all 8 episodes plus the 0 intro, and a podcast exploring not only pharmacy's different career pathways, but also what pharmacy practice is like around the world. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about it.
Me too. It's always good to have another podcaster, and this is the first time I've done video, so I'm pretty excited about this. But everyone's leadership road is a little bit different. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got there.
Yeah, so I was raised in Miami, Florida, and I went to I went to Florida National University for undergrad, where I got a degree in chemistry. I then went on to the University of Florida College of Pharmacy in Miami. In Orlando, and I'm currently a community pharmacist, as you said, and I for a large chain down here in the Southeast, and I'm currently focused on a lot of things outside of the pharmacy in terms of providing better patient care, but also with my company MedVize, but also in terms of learning more about the industry of pharmacy. I founded the podcast RxRadio. I've been fairly involved on campus when I was in school, and I tried to continue that involvement as I graduated, and just be a part of advocating for the profession and building that brand of what pharmacy is going to be like in the future.
All right. Well, what I thought we would do for this episode, just introduce you. I have a feeling we're going to be talking quite a bit. You're one of the new hot stars in the podcast space, if it were. There's about 20 of us, or maybe 10 of us across the country. But what I wanted to do is kind of go through each of your episodes, and we'll go in order just to keep it that way, just so you can keep it in your head. So yeah. I know the episodes, but I don't necessarily know the names. Mm-hmm. So you went right out of the gate with your first you did your intro, but then you did episode 1, and you interviewed a med student. What made you go interprofessional before you even messed with another pharmacist?
Yeah. So interesting thing about that is his name is Dr. Adi Chakra. He was actually a resident, a medical resident in Minnesota. It just timed really well. I did a trip up there and just to visit him specifically, and he was a really good friend of mine. We both got degrees in chemistry at Florida National University. And I was, it was just a timing thing where I was in the midst of starting RxRadio, and I was like, hey, do you want to be on it? Obviously we're friends, we talk a lot, and I instantly wanted to know what his views were on with pharmacists and how he interacted with them. So I thought that, hey, I'm sure there's going to be pharmacists that are going to love to hear about this and hear what views a physician has on pharmacists. So let's right out of the gate, let's jump into that. So that's how that idea came out.
Okay, well, now you have an undergrad in chemistry. Mm-hmm. You could have gone to med school if you'd wanted to. You made the decision to go to pharmacy. I hear 2 different things. Sometimes I hear that pharmacy is a very clean profession. Mm-hmm. There's no getting dirty. There's no dealing with impactions and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But what was it that made you decide to go to pharmacy when you could have readily gone to med school?
Yeah. So I was very focused on the building relationships with people. And I was well aware that people saw their pharmacists much more frequently than they did any other healthcare professional. Sure. And I wanted to be able to be in that role, to be able to have that impact and build that relationship with that person. In addition, I wanted to focus on, the management of certain diseases. And I think that early on I saw a little bit of what the role of, I think, a physician in my eyes, what a physician is. It's like, hey, find out what's going on. Like, please, like, we need you to figure out what is going on and what the best course of action to start might be. But then I also realized that there was another part of healthcare in terms of helping people manage those things, finding out what's going to be the best treatment for that person. And I wanted to focus more on that management of disease states after we found out what was wrong and what was going on.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what made you go to the next episode. You went from Minnesota, then you took an international flight across the Atlantic to the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
And I was just in Ireland for, it would have been vacation 2 years ago. We went in there. We could get some diclofenac gel for $10. No doctor's visit, no trip to the Blue Cross Blue Shield to get everything approved. Everything got taken care of very quickly. You can just go into the pharmacy, Pharmacist. There's so many more pharmacies over there. But tell me what made you go to the UK. I would have thought that the first person that you would have talked to was a retail pharmacist in the US.
Well, funny thing is, I actually did not. I wish I would have gone there. I've actually never even been to Europe.
Okay.
And part of that was me, and that was also part of why I wanted to do this episode. I was lucky enough to meet that guest on Twitter. And I asked him, I let him know, I said, hey, I have a setup where I can just, pretty much do what we're doing here now. And we did set up a Google Hangout, and I was able to record him on a phone call. I wish I would have gone over there, but I'm so interested. It's so, like, before I even started the podcast, I had no idea. I only knew pharmacy in Florida. Beyond, like, not even the US, I would say. And that's all that was in my mind. I went to school here, grew up here. And it's just fascinating to know that there's an equivalent to APhA over there, or there's an equivalent to, there is actually a Walgreens over there, like there's the Boots, exactly. And I was so curious to see, like, how that was, what it was like, and get to know more about, like, what pharmacy was like internationally. And that's where it started, because it started with the UK, because he was just someone he's fairly active on Twitter and other social media platforms in advocating for the profession. And I thought he would have been a great host to come on.
Okay. Then you took a flight back from the UK. You came to talk to a PGY2 resident. And I got to listen to a little bit about that. And so I want to see if you could talk about who should be in a residency, who shouldn't, because when you think about who's at the pharmacy school, these are almost all residency trained pharmacists. So they're going to say, oh yeah, residency. But then when you get into your APPEs or your APHAs, those are a better mix of what's really out there. So first, let's kind of talk about what would make someone go PGY1, PGY2. You personally, I think, decided not to go that route. Yes,
that's correct. For me personally, I was very open to it. I was actually prepared to do a residency. I did all the involvements and I followed all the steps that are what's usually encouraged in terms of getting prepared to apply for a residency. But then getting closer towards the decision making with ASHP and going to that and all that stuff, I decided not to apply because I felt that my passions were nowhere else but in the community setting. And I just didn't see, and I know they do have community residencies, but at the time I didn't see, that being something that was worth pursuing because I personally just didn't feel like it was needed for what I wanted to do. But in terms of who should and who shouldn't, there's a moment in time right now that I think that pharmacy is going in such a crazy direction that I would say, unless you have some other opportunity, unless you have personal, things that need to get taken care of before, or right when you graduate school, I would probably encourage people to seriously consider doing one. Either that or a fellowship even, because the community pharmacy as we know it now there might be a day that we're going to look back and be like, can you believe we used to put pills in a bottle? Like that might be a day that'll come in the future. And I'm not sure if going straight into the community and not doing a residency or not having that residency training to be able to go and do other things, if, coming out of the gate, if that's going to be the best move for people, because of what the future of pharmacy is going to look like, and unfortunately, a lot of people really think short term. They think like, oh my God, I want to do a whole nother year. where you're going to be practicing for another possibly 30 to 40, depending on if you win the lottery or not, so, so
I don't know what the Powerball is today, but yeah.
Exactly. So I to me, it might be worth just, buckling down and taking that 1 year of training to be able to keep your, the future of your career open.
Yeah. And I know with the loans, I think the average is 163, 164 now. So it's a bit scary. And I know that making decisions sometimes emotionally rather than logically is a little bit tough, especially after 19, 20 years of college.
Yeah.
You're like another year, another 2 years.
Exactly.
Once you get to PGY3, you're like, I could have done med school and 3 years of residency. And, so, but it sounds like we've got two different fields really where medicine is kind of going its own direction, pharmacy its own, and we'll all be part of a group. Yeah. So now let's take the airplane. We're going back to the UK.
I like this traveling thing, man. I need to be on this more often.
You're a busy guy. I know the Canes are flying around.
They are.
But tell me a little bit about going back to the UK again. What made you talk to a UK pharmacist again? She was obviously very interested in her patients. Mm-hmm. And she was what I thought I understood as a floater out there.
Yes. So she is a community pharmacist. So the first guest that I'd spoken with, he's actually focusing his career on, I believe, like policy and going into the government for, that kind of route in terms of being a pharmacist. Yeah. Not the traditional roles that, what we think of in terms of being a community pharmacist, but she was a floater basically for a chain. And I think she also worked for an independent. And with her, I wanted to dive more into like the day-to-days of what her struggles were, which was crazy because there was, the UK and obviously other countries as well. The health systems are so different, in terms of how care is provided, who's paying for what, whether it's private, whether it's, by the government. But right. And there's so many differences, but there's also so many like similar pain points that we have, in complete different countries with complete different cultures, complete different governments. What I really discovered with her is that pharmacy as a whole has a lot of very, very similar pain points that we were able to dive deep into.
Okay, and so I think we're about the halfway point. So before we go on to the independent pharmacist, it sounds like a looseness of associations. Like we say the next word and then it goes to the next topic. So we had independent and community. But tell me a little bit about MedVize, what that is. And because now we're kind of talking about community pharmacy and you're talking about an MTM company. So first tell me where the entrepreneurial spirit came from and then how you're actually putting it into practice.
Yeah. So there might be, the entrepreneurial spirit in me. There might be some genetics that might be involved in that. My dad.
The E gene.
Yeah.
E gene.
My dad is he's a business owner in our country. He's from my family's from Trinidad and Tobago. Okay. I'm a first generation American. And, he owns service shops in Trinidad. My uncle owns the equivalent to AAA here. He owns that in Trinidad. And I didn't really, I guess I didn't think to really scratch that itch. But as I started getting to seeing that I was going to be out in the real world after school, even though I was like 27, I just started to see that there was a lot of things that I wanted differently. And there were so many opportunities. And I just felt that it wasn't being taken care of. Like, even if I wanted to do those things and didn't just want to be an entrepreneur, which to me, it's not the entrepreneurial thing. It's just, I feel like it's my only option almost at this point. But it just, being that I feel like I had those genetics there, it just dawned on me that I need to do this on my own and try to create what I envision for the future of pharmacy and patient care.
Yeah, I've heard the term the gig economy, where percentage of jobs that are full-time is not increasing while the percentage of part-time is increasing. So tell me about this MedVize. I don't really know much about it. If you could just kind of start from the beginning, just in case the listeners don't know anything about it.
Sure. So, the way I like to kind of explain it to someone that's never heard of it, especially if they're not even in healthcare, is, when we have complex tax situations, whether it's because we have businesses or we have deductions or all kinds of things, it's not just a simple, fill out a form and sign it. We go to a professional, we go to a tax professional, and we pay a tax professional to handle that for us. Saving us the time, ensuring things are going properly. And I think that same logic should be applied to medication management. There's been tons of studies that show that MTM is, obviously we know the impact of it. To me, we don't really need to do any more studies. Honestly, for me, it's a waste of money at this point.
It's like $3 to $1.
Yeah,
or something.
we know
300%.
Exactly. We know it's impactful, and now we just need to start doing, I think. And I basically wanted to create a company and a brand that when people think about managing their medications, they think that about having a personal pharmacist. And, just like going to the gym, you have a personal trainer help you with everything. To me, I think the model of having a personal pharmacist is where the future would be leading to. So I basically wanted to create something where someone can say, hey, I have, Tony as that's my pharmacist. Whenever I get a medication, he knows everything about my history. He knows where I need to get that medication from. He knows how to get it at the best price, all those types of things. And it is currently set up where it would be, unfortunately, a cash service because, most insurance companies aren't recognizing this beyond, their Medicare patients. So right now it is mostly a cash-based system, I would say, for lack of better words, where people would pay directly for MTM services.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And it sounds like what concierge, my French isn't very good, but a concierge physician is one that's on call, ready to talk to you. This sounds like it doesn't have to be in the middle of the night. Hey, I just went to the Walgreens overnight. Can you tell me what my medicine is for? It's more of is it appointment based or something like that?
It is appointment based, but that's for like a CMR. So like a comprehensive medication review, I would say would be like appointment based, but there are certain models that I have where you would just pay for a CMR and that's kind of it. But there's also a very similar to concierge medicine where it's like a subscription based where you pay a yearly fee or like a 6-month fee. And you have access, to that pharmacist for, the simple questions and things like that, just to have someone that, you can trust in a relationship with. But there's, so that's the, in terms of, what's it called? In terms of like having that relationship with a patient, it's subscription based. And you can make appointments for like those CMRs, like I said, but, funny you mentioned the concierge medicine thing. I eventually after, some brand building and I want to actually start working with physicians, to provide services for their own practice. Because I want to provide packages to physicians to say, hey, I see you're already doing concierge medicine, but do you have, are you providing this type of service to your patient where they can contact a pharmacist, for real specific or detailed questions that you don't really need to be bothered with. So that's one thing I see for the future of it as well.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're kind of setting up with some of the things that some of the states have done. I know Washington State allowed provider status, but most of it was on a cash basis. But then they're showing such improvements in cost. So it's kind of, you have to show the money is there. But it sounds like someone who's a concierge physician is going to very rapidly find out that they're going to run out of time. And a way to expand that time would probably be to hire someone like you to take care of the medication side after initial consults and things like that. Cool. Exactly. Well, let's take it from there to now. We're going to go to, and if I think the owner, if I remember right, he said he had like 2 or 3 people working under him, and then they took care of the pharmacy. So that's on the other end. So you're a solopreneur right now.
Yes.
And then that's pharmacy owner, multiple pharmacies, giant employee payroll. What made you call him? If you're, on the solopreneur outfit.
Yeah. So, I didn't know, much about his operations before we had spoken, but he too was another person that was active on social media, which is basically how I've been meeting most of everyone I've interacted with outside of, pharmacy. It's been on social media, and he was one of them. And, I saw that he owned a pharmacy and I wanted to dive deep more into that, but it seems really cool because he does have, he's really, I think he has like a well-oiled machine with what he's running right now, where he has those 3 individuals under him pretty much handling most of operations, while he's just kind of,
chilling.
For lack of better words, chilling. Yeah. But I mean, I'm pretty sure he's deep into, also making decisions and monitoring operations and stuff like that too. But that's how that came about.
Okay. So then you took a trip to APHAs MRM. So the Southeast, for people that don't know, includes probably all the way up to the Carolinas, most of the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, basically.
Yep.
tell me a little bit about what made you go to MRM. If I remember right, that's a student-run conference.
It is a student-run conference, which was super funny because I was, I got into to Charleston Friday night, and I wanted to from and go and talk to people, and everyone's like, so what school are you from? And I was like, well, I'm not really from any school. I'm just kind of here hanging out. No, but I just got, I explained why I was there, and and their mood totally changed when they saw I was a pharmacist, which was really cool to see. Also, I didn't think they would have expected pharmacists to be roaming around like mingling with the students. But that it is student run, but it's crazy because it's not just students there. It's like the most motivated and involved students, from their schools. And that experience alone, there was so much energy and passion there. It was really cool to see. Whereas if you just go to a pharmacy school, you'll see students there, but some of them will be super involved. Some of them just kind of going through the motions. But here it was like anyone you talk to, it was like straight passion, like fire, like in terms of like trying to
because you're getting those students that are going to go and travel and maybe spend that extra money and the time it takes to get there and make those connections. Exactly. So those are definitely the students, and you kind of went the gamut. I think the first one was from Southeastern, yes, and then a couple Gators. Was it? Is that
there's 2 Gators on there as well. Okay. We had someone from Mercer as well.
Okay. Yeah, so you got a pretty good gamut of them.
Yes.
Okay. And then, if I remember right, were you in somebody's living room for the next one? This is the first video time I'd ever seen. It was on Facebook.
Yes.
But I was like, they're sitting at the kitchen table. What's going on?
So I brought my rig with me to get some recording done at APhA. I wanted to get some good quality audio out of that. And it just worked out where Dr. Mike Corvino, he's the founder of Core Consult RX, where they provide updates and things like that on social media for pharmacy practice. And him and I just hit it off. And, so I was at his house for a while. I was like, hey, let's record an episode. Let's, get your thoughts on where future pharmacy is going and pharmacy practice. So the next episode was us in his living room with his super big funny dogs, recording a podcast. And that was, it's just so crazy too with technology. Like, you can get all this stuff out there anywhere. Like you're in your kitchen, I'm in my living room. I think you're in the kitchen, I'm not sure. But
it's my kitchen.
Yeah, I'm in my living room, which is basically my kitchen. And so it's just cool that we can do this anywhere. So I took advantage while I was in visiting over there with him. So
okay, and then here's where we intersect. Tyler Dalton was my first interview on the Pharmacy Future Leaders.
Really?
I met him on Twitter.
Okay.
And he had, for pharmacy, I was a little surprised when I get students. I'm like, oh, what social media are you on? And they're like, oh, I do some Facebook. There's no Twitter. There's no Insta. There's none of that. They're so petrified of, looking bad. Maybe they have a LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. But Tyler Dalton had been kind of spreading the word about nutrition. I talked with him about what's the 7-second one? It wasn't Instagram. It was
Vine.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. Anyway, he would do these 7-second clips of his meal that he's preparing and all that stuff and nutrition. How did you run into
Snapchat?
him?
Sorry, was it Snapchat?
Yeah, Snap.
Oh, okay,
Snap.
there it is.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know. It's social media.
We got to get you up on this, man.
No, I just
get you up on this.
No, I'm following the advice. You stick with one. So I got 7,000 on Twitter, almost 10,000 on YouTube.
Yeah,
I've got 5 on Snap. So it's my time to start there.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about how you ran into him, and how is it that 2 of the podcasters ended up finding this guy as the nutrition guy?
Yeah. So, this really all comes back to how we're able to, pharmacy is such a small community. And when you put us on a social media, it just becomes so easy to find who stands out and who sticks out. And, being on social media, we were able to connect, and, we just, obviously I saw that he was real focused on something, and it really helps too when you have some sort of focus also, I would say, because you start to kind of build that brand for yourself. And that was one of the things that I just saw him continuously posting about was, nutrition. And, whereas like there's some pharmacists that'll post about all kinds of things and then one nutrition post, so
sure.
His was just nutrition, like just, back to back to back. And, I thought that was super interesting. And, that episode was really cool. Like I had no idea that, where that story, what his story would have been like and seeing how he got passionate about mixing the nutrition part into a pharmacy practice. But social media was, it's been the gateway to everything that I've been pretty much producing thus far. Okay, well, now it's time to put you on the spot. So you've gone to the UK twice. You've gone to like 8 different states. Mm-hmm. So you've gone around. You've done your exploration in the podcast realm. Mm-hmm. What's your brand going to be? Because it's obvious you're kind of gathering data, getting your name out there. Yeah. And I know MedVize might be part of it. What's your future, or what are you looking the future to be? Well, in terms of the current track that it's been going, I have a couple pharmacists that I've reached out to already that I really want to expose what pharmacy is like, and with as much detail as possible day to day in everything that's not what we traditionally know as what pharmacy is. I just recently spoke with a pharmacist that's doing like big data management. She's doing a fellowship and patient organization, like data and stuff like that. And she's a pharmacist, and it's just, right. I have another pharmacist that works in the emergency department, one in transplant that I've been, behind to get on the show. And I want to continue to definitely be a place where people can, if they want to know about what pharmacy is like in different areas of not only practice in the US here, but also the world. I think that I hope they would think of the RxRadio name to go to. I just recently started following a bunch of pharmacists from Australia that I'm hoping to, get on the show at some point. I haven't really talked to anyone directly yet, but hopefully that'll come. But one real big driver of why I also did this was because I have a lot of advice and things that I want to get out into the world about professional, like career development and personal development. In terms of interviewing skills, in terms of networking, in terms of how to tell their own story. And I think that this will be a platform. I haven't even started that yet, but I think eventually that's going to come from me as well. Because I felt that I did a really good job when I was in school at studying it, learning it, and then being able to have a structured way of handling certain things when you're trying to build your career. Well, with Australia, I'm just going back to it. I know we've got a couple of pharmacy podcast episodes where we talked to Robert Starr, SZTAR, and that might be a guy to talk to. I don't know if he's still doing his podcast. He was an independent guy, and down there, I don't think there are any chains. Really? If I'm right about Australia, it's that's crazy. They just said no chains. We're gonna do this independent thing, and I mean it makes sense that the whole island was independent from Britain or the UK. But it sounds like that might be a guy. But so it sounds like I may be having kind of the same thing where what I do in terms of product is my pharmacology books. And that doesn't really match what I do talking to the leaders in pharmacy with Pharmacy Future Leaders. So how do you, I guess, what do you see? How do you see yourself kind of bridging that divide? Because it sounds like you've got 2 brands. You've got the Josh Gates Expedition, Pharmacy Expedition Unknown. Let's talk to people around the world and around the country, which is awesome. And then on the other hand, we've got this kind of exploration of entrepreneurship, being one-on-one with the patients. And then you've got your third, role as a pharmacist. Yeah. So how do you think all these come together? Or is it gig economy where this is how it goes? You have 2-3 jobs. No, I honestly think it's the latter. I think that, it's just, there's going to be some separation of things. Things might not ever overlap, specifically. And I feel like I've had to be really good at making sure that happens, specifically because being in a community pharmacy, I had to make sure that I wasn't, engaging in things that were like a conflict of interest. So I really had to make sure that, some things stayed separate. And I really don't even think that, the MedVize stuff will ever kind of cross over to RxRadio. But within RxRadio itself, I think that, in terms of like professional development, and versus, like exploring pharmacy in different, countries, that might take its form differently. Like one might be more video based. I plan on starting a YouTube channel soon for, videos for both on Facebook and on YouTube, which might be more of like me, kind of maybe teaching or like giving my advice about like how to better, develop professionally and in your career. And then, the audio versions might only be like the interviews I have with other pharmacists. Like it might go that way. But in terms of like the overall, scheme of podcasting versus, MTM versus like, the traditional 9 to 5, although it's like 9 to 10 kind of thing. The integration of that is probably going to stay pretty segregated, I would say, I think.
Okay, so let's talk. I've just got 3 questions at the end here, but before I ask those questions, what's the best way if somebody wants to contact you, get to know a little bit more about you? Maybe this is that emergency med doc that you've been, or pharmacist that you've been looking for. Yeah. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yep. So you can send me an email. I check my emails quite frequently. Richard@medvize.com. That's okay. Richard at medvize.com. I'm on Twitter @thepharmacydude. So you can find me on there. I might change that. I don't know if I'm going to stick with that, but it sounded cool. It was available, so I took it. But right now I'm currently on Twitter @thepharmacydude. I'm also on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/pharmacydude. I'll pop up there as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. And then I think a lot of people don't start entrepreneurship because they don't have their ducks in a row in terms of getting all the things in their life kind of set up so that they have that extra time. Mm-hmm. What's your best daily ritual to keep everything on track so that you can do all of this other stuff?
People are not going to like this answer. And I know that for sure because I don't even like the answer. And
I just work late.
It's giving up fun.
Okay.
Like there's so many fun things that I used to do or I wanted to do when I graduated, that I had to no longer, be able to engage in, because there's just, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And we all still need to be a normal human being in society, get, between 4 to 6 hours of sleep. So, for me, it's been just giving up fun and realizing that, any free time that you have should be towards, building relationships with the people that you love, and then building, relationships with the work that you, love as well to build for the future. So.
Well, I'm having fun now, but that's cool. If this isn't fun, if this is work for you, that's cool.
Well, I guess I guess I do have to add into, you do have to love what you're doing on that side as well. At the end of the day, even though, I say fun in the traditional terms of like, out, playing, tennis or racquetball, but I love podcasting. I love meeting people. I love what we're doing here, interacting.
Sure.
I love providing, patient care to people. I'm on Twitter all the time, just trying to talk to people about, because they posted that they have like acid reflux. I love doing that, and let's say, hey, I'll help you, like I'm a pharmacist on Twitter and I can help you. But it also too, I would say probably I should have really mentioned that in there. It's about, that work that you're going to put in. It's about loving that also.
Yeah, I've got to say the Pharmacy podcast has been kind of an incubator for me. I started, I had 100 Twitter followers a year and a half ago. Now I'm up to about 7,000. I had 1,000 YouTube followers. Now I have like 10,000. Yeah. My book was selling a couple copies a week. Now it sells 20 a day, and it's almost makes 50,000 a year. So it just blew up. So I know that you're going to have a similar experience. But tell me a little bit about. Well, I have to change this. You're going to be the first person I'm going to change this question with, because I've asked it 45 times. Normally I ask, what is the best career advice you've ever received or given? But since you are the multipreneur, don't take that name. I kind of want that.
Yay.
Multipreneur.com. But what is the best careers advice you've ever gotten? Because it sounds like in some way what you've seen, what you've done has led you to a road that will not be happy with a single job, and nor is that necessarily safe. So what's the best careers advice you've ever received?
The best careers advice, like in terms of like
going to your careers, like you become a podcaster, you become a retail pharmacist, you went to pharmacy school, you took a chemistry degree. Who was the person that said, you should do this? Or did you just kind of like, oh, it seems like fun, I'll do organic?
Biochem. I actually have a great story for that then. So you
awesome.
Like, who got me into this? Like who, like if there's, okay. Yeah,
who's
there's one person, her name is Mrs. Carrillo. Okay. She was my, I was not like the best student, right. In high school, but for some reason I took an AP. I don't know what I was doing. I didn't even show up to the AP test, but for some reason I somehow enrolled in one AP class my senior year. It was AP psychology. She was my psychology teacher. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
She was actually in, I think the story goes, she was in pharmacy school at some point, and then like something happened and she decided not to pursue that as a career. She wanted to teach. And I don't know what I was like. I was a jock. Like I had no good grades. I almost didn't go to like a university. I was going to go to like, the community college because that was all I felt like I could have gone into. And she was like, what are you going to do with your career? I was like, I don't know. I'm probably going to do like business, or my mom's a nurse. Maybe I'll do nursing. And she was just like, what about pharmacy? And I was like, I don't know. Like, and just after her telling me that was all she said. She didn't give me other options. She wasn't like, what about this? Or what about medicine? Like, what about being a physician, or what about being a police officer? She was like, what about pharmacy? And I don't know what she saw in me, or I guess maybe she might've known that I might've been successful with that, or maybe she I would have liked it, but that's the option she gave me. And I looked into it and I was like, I think this is, a really good fit for me. And now I'm talking to you as a pharmacist, about why I'm a pharmacist. So that's how that, that's how that played out.
La leyenda de Señora Carrillo. Yeah, something like that. Yes. So the legend of Mrs. Carrillo, yes. Maestro Carrillo. So tell me a little bit, just the last thing, what inspires you? You've obviously committed to the profession. You're committed to everything you do. You didn't just pick up a mic and you've got a great rig there. You're letting everything go out with great quality. What inspires you?
Helping people. I really want to help people. Like everything that I do in terms of, learning about things. Obviously I want to, I have personal goals in my career and things like that. But what I think helps me love everything that I do is that like, I know at every moment I'm helping someone.
Yeah. And that sounds good.
And that to me is what's really been driving, it drove me in school, it drove me the late night studying, it drives me when I'm stressed out at the pharmacy. It's just knowing that I get to help like that one person at that one time.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Richard Waithe, thank you so much for being on the Pharmacy Podcast.
It was a pleasure.
All right. We thank you so much for listening. And if you're interested in being on the Pharmacy Podcast, Pharmacy Future Leaders, hook up with me on Facebook or give me an email, aagara@dmacc.edu. We thank you again for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag Pharmacy Future Leaders.